feeding of the 5,000, people had to be fed before they could listen. You can't listen if you start hungry. So your mind is affected by food to the point where Jesus said, no, we've got to feed them before we can teach them.
Yeah, that's really good. So if you're missing certain activity that you've got, which is going to help your mind.
You get really, really hungry. You get frustrated. All of a sudden it starts taking over your mindset.
Sure. That's right. Anybody else want to share something?
When I was in high school, I made a decision at one point where I would stop eating all sorts of junk food, and instead, anytime I was hungry, I would just eat fresh fruit, like this is in between meals. And I've actually never felt as good as when I did that. Yeah, just fresh fruit instead of chips, which is my typical go-to. They don't have shapes in there.
Because of my mother, who's helped me in the past with my eating habits, I actually had a 5-day fast with nothing but just water. I've done that a couple times. If anybody gets a chance to do that, it is.
Cool, man. Nice. So you found that it cleared your mind? Yeah.
Really?
Your detox. Anybody have any examples in the Rhonda?
With the Bible, you talked about David, how how the king tried to fill him up on his wine and everything and didn't do it, and how he had his own food, which was fresh fruit and veggies, and how different he was at the end of it. So that's what we talked about. But I spoke about with the Eden's depression group, was with the brain, and we had to make those meals, and I made a salad, and then I made one at home too, and for 3 days I had one of those salads, like with all the things that he said that were good for the brain, and I was saying to the girls, my eyes were never so clear. Yeah, and then I noticed it as I had a bit of things that then I was clear. So it's interesting.
That's really cool. Yeah, I remember what Rachel said there. It's crazy how we know. It's crazy how we know these things are bad for us, but we still do them anyway. You must be a special kind of student. So yeah, like Rhonda said, we're going to look at Daniel, and like I said earlier, we're going to look at Daniel's example. And what I'm going to do is we're going to look at Daniel chapter 1, and we're going to immerse ourselves into the context of Daniel chapter 1. Pretend like we're in part of the Daniel crew. So turn to Daniel chapter 1. If you've got one of these fancy new Bibles, it's page 500. If you got your own Bible, figure it out. But what we're going to do is when we immerse ourselves into that context and how Daniel was raised, what Daniel was overcome with, we're going to peek into the future of Daniel, into chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and see how the decisions he made in Daniel chapter 1, specifically in relation to the gut, affected the decisions he made in the rest of the chapters in the many years that he lived. So when you're all there, do you want to make like a duck sound? Can you do a duck sound? Let's do that again for fun. Wow. So much fun. So now that you're in Daniel chapter 8, I'm going to give you a little bit of context. Daniel was about, most people estimate about 16, 17 at the time of the capture of the nation of Judah. So here's this like 15 to 17-year-old kid. Seth, you were 17? 16, so about Seth's age. Seth, wait, yeah, that's Seth. You probably look like Seth, but maybe a little bit more brown. So that's who Daniel was. And he would have been raised in a diet mostly with pulses and with fresh vegetables and fruits, right? The Genesis diet, they call it. And that's something that Robbie and Dan covered. It's basically just plant-based food. So Daniel, when he was captured, he would have been captured by this great big nation. He would have been so scared. When they captured him, they took him because he was nobility and he was good looking, the Bible says. Which just means that he was a smart dude. He was smart, not just aesthetically, but he was smart, and he was part of the nobility. So he was took in, and do you know what they did to him? What was one of the first things that they did to him? The chain? Yeah, that's right. Wendy put it so eloquently. They cut his nuts off. They desexed him, right? He was a eunuch, but they didn't desex him. They just that's castrated him. That's the word I was looking for. He was made a eunuch. After he was made a eunuch, he was told that his God had lost. So in the context of a nation being captured back in the day, was an admission of the God of that nation had lost. So if I'm Babylonian, I'm Chaldean, the Chaldean God has overtaken the Jewish Jehovah. So that's what they thought. So when Daniel was captured, he goes, your Jehovah lost, you're a eunuch, and what else did they do? They changed his name, somebody said that. They changed it from Daniel to Belteshazzar. Daniel means God is judge, and Belteshazzar is something about a pagan god. I don't really know the proper definition, but I think Shazar is God in Aramaic or something like that. I might be mistaken. Is the gate to God? Yeah. Oh, Bel is God. There you go. He's got it. Nathan knows better than me. So Daniel had three major things happen to him. He lost his identity. He was Belshazzar, no longer Daniel. He lost his ability to procreate. He became a eunuch. And his God, who he believed in and stayed faithful to so far, was lost, was conquered. So you can just picture the torment that Daniel would have been. And then there's one more thing that happens to Daniel. After all these miserable things that happen, the king comes and says, look, you're pretty smart, dude. I'm going to get you. I'm going to put you at my table. I'm going to put you through my school. You're going to be a really great guy for my kingdom. Here's some of my food. And it would have been enticing food. It would have been really good, like succulent meat, some really nice veggies, perhaps, like some gravy. I don't know what they ate at the time. I wish I could find a picture of like a Babylonian feast. But I assume it would have been quite elaborate. It was a very wealthy nation, the most wealthy nation at that time, actually. So he had come so far as to have lost his God, lost his identity, lost his ability to procreate. The only thing that he was offered was food that was probably aesthetically appealing to all of the senses, right? What do you think Daniel did when he was offered that food? What do you think you would have done? I would have had food, if I'm completely honest. I like a good feed. But Daniel stood firm. Daniel said, no, I'm not going to defile myself. We'll read verse 8. So we're going to Daniel chapter 1, verse 8 to verse 16. I'm going to read it pretty quickly because it's a lot of verses. It says this, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested to the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Maybe instead of reading up to verse 16, I'll just tell you what happened. Then the guy who was in charge of Daniel said, no, I can't do that. I'm going to die. I'm in charge of making sure that you're a healthy person. And if you're not healthy, my head's going to get chopped off. So Daniel goes, okay. So he goes to the guy below that leader. He says, hey, look, man. Probably like a side deal. He goes, hey, look. Test me for 10 days. Just give me 10 days. Just please give me just pulses, water, and vegetables. That's all I ask. And if in 10 days I don't meet your requirements of health, I'll eat your food. Just give me 10 days. So the guy goes, yeah, fair enough, I suppose. So Daniel and his three friends, they had pulses, vegetables, and fruits. That's all they ate. And after 10 days, in verse number 15, and at the end of the 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. Thus the steward took away that portion of delicacies and the wine that they were to drink and gave them vegetables. So at the end of the 10 days, not only did they look better, but they looked a little bit healthier, not only in appearance, but also in their mind, as we'll see later on. We'll see that in verse number 19. We'll just keep reading. It says, then the king interviewed them, and among them all, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they served before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in his realm. Thus Daniel continued until the first year of the king. So not only did he look better, but academically and intellectually, he surpassed everybody. People that were in Nebuchadnezzar, the king's council, for years, multiple years, giving him advice on how his kingdom should run, how he should go about his battles. He surpassed them, a 17-year-old king, just on a diet of grain, pulse, and vegetables. And I find that really interesting how that one decision to stay firm in his diet pretty much made history for us. The book of Daniel, I don't think would have been the book of Daniel without that one decision. That one decision to be faithful in something so small provided him with something so great, it's incomprehensible to me. So we're going to do a little bit of a sneak peek as to how that decision rolls out into the future. So turn to Daniel chapter 2, and we're going to look at verse 10 and 11. So Daniel chapter 2, what's happening here is that king has a really bad dream. He has a bad dream, and he really doesn't know what he dreamt. But he doesn't know the interpretation, and he wants to know what happened. So he's got all of his wise men, his astrologers, and magicians, and he says, look, tell me what I dreamt, otherwise I'm going to kill you. And they couldn't tell him. So you can picture the frustration in the room, because these people, in verse 10, in verse 10, they being pressed by the king, saying, tell me, I know that you know, because you've advised me so far, saying that you are in connection with this God. Just tell me. Please tell me. The frustration in the room would have been great. And the Chaldean said, oh man, there is not one man on this earth who can tell the king the matter that he wants. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such a thing of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. He says, the thing that you ask, king, nobody on earth can know. And then he goes, well, I'm going to kill you all. And then Daniel gets brought into the scene and he goes, just give me time, I'll give you the answer. So that decision enabled him to be firm. Because this is my opinion, but I think it's backed up with science. The second that he chose to eat the healthy food, there was no longer any room for disease to cloud people's minds. There was just no room for that to happen. And as he could do that, he could stay firm, because my example of waking up in the morning and just not being able to spend time with God wasn't the experience Daniel had. He had a healthy diet. He had a diet that promoted positive microbes, promoting positive neurotransmitters, promoting a positive understanding of Scripture and understanding of who God is, which enabled him to stand firm in that decision, not only stand firm, but interpret the king's dream. Daniel chapter 3, what happens in Daniel chapter 3? Anyone remember? It's a golden statue. Nebuchadnezzar raises a golden statue and he asks everybody to bow down to it. And then he goes, at the sound of the trumpet, everybody bow down. The trumpet sounds, everyone's down, except for 4 people, Daniel and his 3 friends. You see this consistent approach to Daniel, with Daniel, with things that are defiling he finds. It's not just food. I want to make that point pretty clear, because when we talk about gut health, we talk about food a lot, but I think it's your mind that overrules that power. So the decision to stand firm starts with your mind and then your gut. I just thought it was pretty cool. Daniel chapter 4, what happens is Nebuchadnezzar has another dream, and he can't interpret it, so he goes to Daniel again. Daniel tells him the dream. Daniel chapter 5, Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's descendant, has a problem interpreting some more text, so Daniel gets brought in, and Daniel can do it again. It seems to be pretty consistent in Daniel chapter 6 as well. Daniel gets thrown in the lion's den, but that doesn't seem to trouble him at all. In fact, God takes care of him. The thing that I want to point out is that through Daniel's diet, Daniel's faith was strengthened. Not only Daniel's faith was strengthened, but Daniel's ability to overcome obstacles was strengthened. Is that kind of making sense? And this will tie in a little bit further with us, because that one decision of being faithful in something so small as to not eating like an Oreo for us. It would be the equivalent of like not going to a big steak dinner or something just really bad for you, or just injecting yourself with some drugs. That one decision, which is so simple to make that's fun, enabled him to make a decision that was far greater. Is that kind of making sense? Because with all the Jews that were captured, where are the other people mentioned in the Bible? Like, where are the other people in Daniel's story? Because there was a number of Jews that were captured, it wasn't just Daniel and his friends. Yeah, they must have compromised, right, guys? Because they're no longer in Daniel chapter 2, they're not there, they weren't at the prayer with Daniel. They didn't discern that text. Where are they in Daniel chapter 3 with the statue? They bowed down. In Daniel chapter 4, they weren't brought in for counsel because they were bowed down. They got no ability anymore. Daniel chapter 5 is the same thing, right? Daniel chapter 6 with lions den. It's not the case that any of these other people were mentioned. But what about us when it comes to that? Because I've followed multiple times. We hear the story of Daniel, and I used to find it to be really discouraging, because people used to tell me, look, just make one faithful decision and everything will be okay. But I didn't make one faithful decision. Like, Daniel stood firm the whole time. Like he never defiled himself with any of the bad meat. But I defile myself on a constant basis. Like, do I want that grape juice? Yes, I want that grape juice. I don't even think twice about it. Like, do I want those instant noodle ramen? Yes, I want that instant noodle ramen. So what happens to us? Are we like doomed to a life of Daniel's other Jews, where we just kind of don't make it? What do you think? What do you think the solution is for us? Take some time to think about it, and we'll tie it back up and we'll finish up here. What do you think happens to us if we have the same fate as Daniel's friends?